For full-length audio, please check out our podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Welcome to Generation X Paranormal.
The aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific wartime this morning. The anti-aircraft guns began barking during a blackout ordered by the 4th Interceptor Command at 2:25 a.m. The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
We're going to talk about when the U.S. went to war against an alien or perceived alien attack. Yeah, so some of you may not know this one. It's a little bit of a different story, and I think it was kept from a lot of people during that time, but I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So you have to understand this particular point in U.S. history. It was very tumultuous. We had just 3 months prior been attacked at Pearl Harbor.
Here is the motion picture record released by the United States Navy. Sneak sky and sea raid on Pearl Harbor, America's mid-Pacific naval bastion. On December 7th, 1941, Japan, like its infamous Axis partners, struck first and declared war afterwards. Costly to our Navy was the loss of war vessels, airplanes, and equipment, but more costly to Japan.
There had been a lot of warnings about potential attacks from the Japanese, ranging anywhere from additional attacks in Hawaii to the entire West Coast. And in fact, prior to this event, there was an attack, I believe, up North California, where a Japanese submarine was spotted and attacked. So America was really in grips of we had been at war, or we knew we were going to war. I would imagine that's how it felt. So yeah, we had just come off the heels of Pearl Harbor, and it was 3 months. It was only 3 months prior to that. So these people were scared and they were frightened, and they thought an attack was imminent. They spot this craft coming, I believe, from north to south, and it's moving really slow. It's not a balloon. A balloon's not going to move that fast, and it's something definitely there because it's caught on radar.
Army officials declined to comment on the possibility that the object might have been a blimp. However, it required nearly 30 minutes to travel some 25 miles.
They had this craft coming south, moving incredibly slow, slower than an aircraft. They didn't know what to do to keep away from seeing certain certain landmarks, certain things on the ground. They decided, hey, let's shut off all the lights in the city so they can't figure anything out. Again, this is prior to the days of some of the technology we enjoy today, like FLIR and things like that. Blacked out an entire city, Los Angeles. That's a massive city, even for that time, to be completely blacked out. And it wasn't like it was just done for 10, 15 minutes. They blacked the entire city out, what turns out to be until the next morning. Air raid sirens in the middle of the night, I've been there. It's not fun. It will wake you up.
Far slower than an airplane. Watchers on the rooftop of the Columbia Broadcasting Building in the heart of Hollywood could plainly see the flashes of guns and searchlights sweeping the skies in a wide arc along the coastal area. Concussion of the shells could be felt in downtown Los Angeles, 15 miles away.
So sort of looking at some things here, and I've got it brought up, and I want to keep my facts as straight as possible. It looks like, of course, as we know, it was February 25th, 1942. And it was the air raid began at 2:25 in the morning. So yeah, it would have been pretty alarming at that point. And it was a moonlit night, which was probably one of the reasons they went ahead and powered down the entire city. But suddenly there was alarms, and it says that searchlights swept the sky. And all of a sudden, they piped these huge spotlights into the sky. And if you're a fan of DC, or you're a fan of Batman and stuff like that, you know that those things are bright, and it was just lighting up the sky. And what makes that even more interesting is that it's sweeping. So I mean, it probably had a lot of people who were awake really disoriented.
They saw airplanes in the air. Semi-official sources say they probably were the U.S. Army's pursuit. Several observers say they saw one or more planes spotlighted by 20 or 30 searchlights. The object moved southward, presumably over Huntington Park at the western edge of Los Angeles, and on southward to about Long Beach on the coast. By 3:30 a.m., observers said the object appeared to be over the south of Long Beach. Searchlights closely followed the object down the coast and kept it centered in their glare. Shells frequently could be seen bursting near the object, but none appeared to hit it. The shooting stopped about 3:30 a.m.
A lot of people thought maybe this was our first step into war. They're coming to attack us, so I'm sure it caused a lot of angst in people. But the part that I think gets missed in this story is that not only was I in the military, but I was also part of ordnance. And if you don't know what ordnance is, it's the stuff that makes things go boom. Okay, lots and lots of boom, and it's pricey. It's very pricey. Now, I don't know the practices of the military back in 1941/42, but I can tell you that every single round, everything is always accounted for. So it's not like you're given ample amount of ammunition and an ample amount of expense. I mean, it's very expensive. It is today, and I'm sure it was then too. And the figure that blows me away is over 1,400 rounds are expended. That's a lot of boom. And if you're in the military, you know this, but if you're engaging a target, you're not actually firing rounds unless you know there was a threat or an assessed threat. You're not just, unless you're doing cover fire or something like that, but you're still technically under threat. They shot over 1,400 rounds at this thing, and it didn't fall out of the sky. So I know for some of you that's not going to hit home the way it does for me, but I know for a lot of you, you're going to understand that is a lot of rounds. Artillery, not cheap. They engaged a target. I guarantee you they were given orders to attack this target. I am a big believer in trying to keep and save face. I get it. And I'm sure that that wasting, or not wasting, but expending that much ammunition, people are going to ask questions. So the next day, find out there's been some minimal damage. There's even a few deaths from heart attacks and things like that. So it didn't go completely unscathed. And of course, nothing was shot down. So what do you do then? Well, you engage in some sort of subterfuge, and I am not a conspiracist at nature, and I don't lean in conspiracy very, very easily, but I can tell you that military and government have been known to, just say, put a spin on things, and I understand that. So now you've expended over 1,400 rounds of ammunition. You're the Secretary of the Navy. What do? Well, you basically say, hey, guys, guys and gals, this was a false alarm. It was just people with jitters, is one of the comments they made. It was just people from being scared that Pearl Harbor was happening on our shores. Well, okay, that's fine, I guess, but there was a lot of people there that saw it, not just the soldiers, but there were people that were awoken by these sirens, their air raid sirens. And one of the Secretary of War's comments were, well, there was about, let me see what the comment was. There were numerous weather balloons that had been released over the area that night. And, quote, they carried lights for tracking purposes, and these lighted balloons were mistaken for enemy aircraft. I'm definitely ringing the BS alarm on this one. So I know to date there is not a balloon, weather balloon, experimental balloon, mylar balloon, you name whatever kind of balloon you want. No balloon is going to survive an artillery strike. They won't. It won't happen. That's the whole point. Why would you have an artillery round strike a target like a balloon and be ineffective? Not only that, why put 1,400 rounds into it? There was no weather balloon. Could it have been jitter? Sure. But the part that gets interesting is that as people do, there may not have been iPhones, there may not have been, internet or things like that, but there were still photographs and there was cameras. So the Los Angeles Times published a photo, and this was on February 26th. So this is an incredibly famous photo. It's very likely that you've seen it. It's the one where, and it's in black and white, mind you, but it's where there's just like this, pyramid look of searchlights. I mean, they're all fixated on one single target. Now, that's important to think about. If there were many weather balloons, why are they all engaging this one single target? Okay, so this picture also shows tons of anti-aircraft artillery being fired, and it looks and has the feel of a war-taken photo at night. So, what is also interesting is that particular photo has been researched and put through Photoshop and just done some amazing stuff to look at, and you can see very clearly in certain negatives that there is a craft, or I should just say there is an object in the sky, and it looks it looks like what you would expect a UFO, traditional UFO, to look like, especially one from that era rather. So, of course, you've got a lot of people that are disproving that are saying, well, that's not the case, it was a weather balloon, or that just the fact that all of these searchlights converged in one area and created this sort of visual effect to have it look like a craft. Now, I've had a lot of wool pull over my eyes in my time, some of which I've bought, some of which I haven't. Yeah, I'm not buying that one. I just think that a situation got out of hand, and they were scrambling for some kind of a way to explain that and explain the cost of that. So what does that look like? Let's just play fun for a minute. Let's say we're at New York City. Okay, it makes me think of Independence Day, but say we're in New York City. And because we have been attacked there of somewhat recent time, granted it wasn't 3 months ago, but it's been at least in my lifetime. So let's say we're in New York City, and all of a sudden the president, I don't even know at this point, maybe it's the governor, decides, hey, you know what? Let's shut all the lights down. Let's go dark. First of all, to shut an entire grid down these days, wow. Because not only has that changed in such a way from 1942. I mean, electricity powers everything. It powers our vehicles now. It powers our entire livelihood. Televisions, computers, internet. It is our resource. It's a commodity. It is not a luxury. Unfortunately, some people don't have it, and that's terrible. But okay, so they go dark. Now you better have some explaining to do if you go dark, right? We'll cover that. Okay, so now all of a sudden you scramble the military. Well, being from a East Coast squadron, scrambling a master jet base, guess what? We've been there. I've done it. But you scramble a master jet base and you get these birds in the air. Okay. Nowadays our technology's way different than it was in 1942. But again, we're just playing our what would we do hats in the ring here. That's terrible English. But okay, so we scramble these jets and we chase after this thing. Now, even though we're much more technologically advanced than we were in 1942, I'm pretty sure whatever we're putting up there is not going to be anywhere as advanced and capable as what we think we're going to come up against, right? So you get these birds in the air and they're out there in lickety split time. They're there. And all of a sudden they're engaging a target. Okay, well, what does that look like? Nowadays, granted, it's missiles and what have you, and I'm sure our technology would keep us from having that big of a whiff. I don't know. We don't know that. There's so much unknown on the other side. We only get 50% of the view here. Okay, so we fire on this thing and it does nothing. It stands there, flies there, hovers there, whatever it does. What do we do then? Okay, well, you do it again. You keep attacking this thing until somebody tells you not to. All right, so let's say you're the governor or the president, and you said, okay, we are having no luck with this target, much like they did in Independence Day. Are you going to use nukes? Gosh, I hope not. What do we do at that point? Is it any different than what they did in 1942? People are going to scramble for an explanation. And I find that interesting because given our technological advances, and given our what we perceive to be growth as a human species, we're still left with that same problem. How do you explain that? Now, okay, pictures these days and pictures from those days, yeah, they're vastly different. Everybody's got a mobile television studio in their pocket, and there would be so many cameras up at the sky, but would it make a difference? Would it make a difference if 30 million people saw the same thing, or just those 1.5 million? I think yeah, granted, you get more eyes on it, but it's still as unexplainable. Okay, so now you're forced to basically either backtrack or admit to the fact that there are beings from other planets. Now, that particular part is just play. You know, we're just brought up a very 30,000 foot view on what we would do in something similar, but it's not something out of the ordinary. If you look, if you go online and you look up what has been released within the last couple of years, the Navy has come up against some crafts that they cannot explain. So much to the fact that the government has basically said, "Hey, this is a thing. We don't know what it is." Now think about that for a second. Back in 1942. Now, granted, that was a long time ago when you think of an average human's lifespan. Okay, 1942. Pretty soon we'll be looking at people who are no longer with us that can explain us from that, or explain things from that time. But when you think about the grand scale of time, or grand scale of things, that is not a lot of time. And now all of a sudden we have gone from we don't know, let's engage in subterfuge, let's keep it from people, Project Blue Book. And if you haven't looked that up, you ought to, because I will do a show on it at some point. But yeah, all this denial and all these other things that kept us from the truth, now they realize that's not the case anymore, because we do have so much access to information and so much access to the world that we did not have back then, that they're pretty much throwing their hands up. Yeah, this stuff exists. We have no frickin' clue what it is. Good luck. So, yeah, I mean, do you worry? Do you think about, your own family, your own homestead, things of that nature, how you protect yourself against potentially a threat? And that's the whole thing. We don't know. There's too much unknown in this. But to say that those folks in Los Angeles in 1942 were acting a little bit crazy, or we question any of their motives and what they did, guys, we're in that position. I don't know that any of us, given the knowledge that even we had today, if we were put there in 1942, let's say you strip away all our iPhones, you strip away all our technology, and we quantum leap into 1942 Los Angeles, and we're there at almost 3 o'clock in the morning, and we have nothing to explain anything but our own eyes, and maybe people who have money have a photo or a camera to take photographs, which, if I remember correctly, in 1942 we're talking about the ones where I think a little flap opens up and there's these little knobs at the bottom. Anyway, it's not anything that's fast. It still comes down to what an entire group of people saw, and what a force could try to attack. It is just, you're left with the tangible assets of that time, and I don't know that we'd have done any better. And it's unfortunate because this particular incident kind of gets swept under the rug. I mean, of course, you got your Roswells, you've got your You got your abductions. I'm from Arizona, and Travis Walton, that's a pretty big one for us. Fire in the Sky, and I'm definitely going to do a show on that, so don't worry. But yeah, I don't know that it would have done any better. Anyway, once again, I'm Logan Matthias. I'm your host. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good night.